Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the stream. It is Monday, and I hope you had a wonderful New Year's. I had a great one. Of course, I missed the Friday stream, unfortunately, because I was traveling and didn't make it home in time. It got late and couldn't do the stream. So, you missed out on Friday. Here's Monday. We have a couple of stories for you, and probably one that is the biggest one that happened over the weekend is I don't know. Venezuela's president just got kidnapped by the United States. Now, there's a lot that goes along with this, and you might be on one side or the other, but it seems that the international community, for the most part, is all for this. Of course, you got Russia, China, Iran that are not for this, but I mean, you kind of expect that, right? So let's go through a couple things. It's one of those details that it really affects the markets. And that's why when you look at it, you might be thinking, hey, dividend dudes, you do finance updates and finance news. You have to look at this because there's always somebody who benefits. And that's what we're looking at. Follow the money, see who benefits. So there might be a stock that's worth getting. So let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty. So one thing that we have to look at, and I'm sorry it's a little bit boring, but we have a little bit of a history lesson because it's not as cut and dry as you would think. Let's go into here. All right, make me small. So I got a short timeline here of things that have happened over the history of Venezuela as far as their government's concerned. Now, up until 1999 and the 2000 elections, they had a democratic government, which means they had elections every year or every however many years they would have elections, and a new president, just like the United States, would get elected to run the country. And this was going on for since the 50s. And it worked well up until the time when there was the oil crisis. The price of oil dropped considerably. Venezuela, of course, is a large oil producing country, lost a considerable amount of GDP and wealth. At that time, the people were upset, and that led to a revolution of sorts. There's a couple coups that ensued, and Hugo Chavez, of course, was the revolutionary who was in the forefront of this revolution. So, what happens? In 2002, so there's the two coups. So in 2002, brief ousting of Chavez. Once he got power, that lasted like 3 months before he was put back into power. And he was one of the key players that put the, I suppose, dictatorship or authoritarian government in place. And over time, it became more and more authoritarian. Now, the people seemed to like him at first because he put in a lot of social freedoms for the people, made it easier to do certain things, and they enjoyed it. However, they started to get less and less freedom as time went on, and he became more and more of a dictatorship. And who did he put in place? Of course, Maduro. So Maduro is a Chavez disciple, and the vice president also is a Chavez disciple. And they are running the government even more as the type of government that he put in place, and become more and more of a dictatorship. Now, the Venezuelan government and the country as a whole has been going down every year. The people that I talk to that live in Venezuela that aren't the richest of the rich say that the living conditions have just gotten terrible over the years, and each year is worse than the next. So they're not doing anything to help the population as a whole. They're there to help the military and themselves stay in power. One of the things that they do is oust any opposition to that power. So just recently they had elections in 2024, and Maduro was not elected president. And unfortunately, the newly elected president was ousted. And so he's kind of on the run, been ostracized from Venezuela. These are not great resume building attributes when it comes to a presidency. I mean, that's not how you rule a country. It's how you dictate how a country is ruled. So it's just, it's not one of those things that should be tolerated in this time. And there's a number of dictatorships that are taking notice of this. So let's go through this. So in 1980s, there's an oil bust that causes popular unrest. 1989, and I'm gonna kill these names. I'm sorry. El Caracazo has mass protests and lethal repression, legit, legitimacy, legitimacy crisis, if I could speak, and two failed military coups led by and inspired by Hugo Chavez in 92. In 98, Chavez is elected. He starts the Bolivarian Revolution, and that's his new form of government, is Bolivarian. 1999, new constitution refounds state as Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So he rewrites the constitution that's been in place and starts his new authoritarian government. I can't speak today. In 2002, 47-hour coup. Chavez briefly ousted, returns amid mass mobilization from his military. 2007, the PSUV party, which is in play today, is formed, and continued executive consolidation. So they're consolidating the executive branch to overtake the legislative and constitutional branch. So it's just following the playbook of any dictator out there. In 2013, Chavez dies. Nicolas Maduro narrowly wins April special election, and I think narrowly is even if he lost, I think he would have won. In 2015, opposition MUD wins by 2/3 supermajority in National Assembly. 2017 Supreme Court usurps Assembly. New Constitution Assembly convened. And 2018 contested presidential election returns Maduro. 2019 dual power crisis. Juan Guaido recognized abroad as interim president. 2003 opposition dissolves interim government framework. 2024 contested presidential vote. Reports of Maduro sworn in January 2025. And 2026, of course, he's been captured. So even if a new president is elected, he doesn't get to run the country. That is a red flag in and of itself, right? And most countries around the world do not recognize Maduro as the true president because he lost. And in any case that it says otherwise, it's obviously a rigged election. So let's see what happens in late 1980s, 1990s, collapse of the old order. Oil prices fall and debt led to the austerity. So that was probably the biggest problem. If oil prices never crashed and it kept going up, Venezuela kept getting richer, then I think there would probably have been no revolution. The people would have been happy, and as long as you have a happy people, you have a happy presidency, right? So what are they facing today? So right now, they are under the rule of interim president, the vice president. What needs to happen is a peaceful changing of the guard. So the old Maduro and Hugo Chavez loyal fans of the government need to be ousted, really. They need to quit. Because as long as they're in power, they could affect rule. So constitutional and sovereignty uncertainty, who governs post January 3, and that really should be the newly elected president. Humanitarian emergency and public services, shortages of food, medicine, and degraded health systems. That's been going around for a long time now, at least a decade, probably more. Economic stabilization and oil. Sector recovery, hyperinflation, legacy, debt, arrears, and sanctions. They've had sanctions on Venezuela for quite a while as well because, they've been doing some pretty bad things. One is drug trafficking, human trafficking. Two is the dictatorship. And we'll get into the oil because that's really, I think, the crux of the topic right now. So institutional rebuilding and rule of law. Of course, we need to restore independent electoral and judicial bodies, bring the assembly back, and bring free and fair elections. Inclusive political settlement. Durable transition requires buy-in from PSUV, opposition, and armed forces, so everybody needs to agree. Security sector reform, depoliticizing armed forces, and curbing organized crime penetration. So what we need to do there is there's a very large organized crime presence within Venezuela. Of course, the aforementioned drug trafficking, and this goes into the military and government officials as well. And that's what they're trying to put on Maduro, is that he knew about and sanctioned the drug trafficking in the country. So he is the quote unquote kingpin of drug trafficking. Security sector reform, we did that. International alignment and sanctions architecture, coordinating global stances and managing external actors, migration and social reintegration, enabling return of migrants, and scaling social protection. Now, that's interesting that they call them return of migrants, but a lot of these people, there's about 2 to 4 million Venezuelans who have been basically booted out of the country. So they really want to go back to their country, but they couldn't because of political strife, and they're either going to be arrested or killed. So that's a lot of people that can't go back because of Maduro. Now, hopefully, with the new regime change, if there is one, they can return and start to rebuild the country, and that's one of the big things that need to happen. Now let's look at the second thing I got here is follow the money. And this is the big one. So we got oil companies in Venezuela since Chavez era briefing. So I put in a little form here to kind of briefly explain what happened. So when Chavez came in, they decided that they're going to privatize their oil. And if you look at any country that tries to privatize their oil, it does not end well for that country. Libya, Iraq, to name two. It's not just the OPEC nations, but they disrupt the oil flow. They disrupt the prices. It's a big debate whether or not that's a good or bad thing. But when you look at history, it does not bode well for the country that privatizes their oil. So when Chavez came in, they decided that they're going to take ownership of the stakes of the companies that come in and pump their oil, which, I mean, you don't want somebody to come and just steal your oil, right? But there's a commerce there that has to happen. But they wanted way too much. So Chevron, ironically, is the only one that stayed. So Chevron accepted the 2006-2007 joint venture terms with a PDVSA, which means the state owns 60%, a minimum of 60% or greater of that oil stake and that part of the company. It remains the only major U.S. operator under special licenses, produces around 200,000 to 250,000 barrels per day as of 2024, 2025. So they're still there. And of course, Rustball from Spain, Italy have a smaller venture. China and I don't even know where Sinavenza is, but Russia and Russia retains limited stakes, 15 to 20,000 barrels per day, but it pales in comparison to what Chevron does. And honestly, Venezuela has enough oil. I mean, they could double or triple what Chevron does if they put in the infrastructure in place to do that. So the companies that left or were ousted is ExxonMobil, refused the 2007 nationalization. All their assets were seized, and they went to the International Court for arbitration and was awarded $1.6 billion, which Venezuela hasn't paid yet. ConocoPhillips was another one that rejected the terms. They lost their 3 sites. They went to arbitration as well and was awarded 8.7 to 10 billion. Of course, Venezuela, if they can't afford to pay 1.6 billion to Exxon, they're not going to do 10 billion to Conoco. So yes, they have not gotten theirs. And then France and UK, BP, Norway, Shell, they converted to minority stakes or exited due to sanctions and low profitability. So basically, they stayed with a lower minority stakes. Of course, they weren't producing that much, and all of them have left the country before this time because of profitability. So 2007, Chavez nationalized, required foreign operators to cede majority control to PDVSA. Sanctions in 2017 onward, U.S. and European measures under Maduro restricted foreign participation, license revocations in 2025. So currently, Chevron remains the only Western major oil company under U.S. license. Chinese and Russian partners, of course, still operate because they are on good terms with Venezuela. And European firms largely exited after sanctions and license revocations. So that's the oil. And that's what we're looking at because we own Chevron. So let's see what Chevron is doing today. So they are up 5.79%. And over the last 5 days, they're up 9%. Look at, they're at is that the 3 month? Okay, that's the 3 month. 6 months, 6 month low. So the 1 year low is back in April. So they are up since April, and look at that. So that is what we're looking at. What's going to happen to Chevron, the only oil producing company from the U.S.? So let's go to ours. Let's see how they have worked out in our portfolio here. I need to go to, there we go. All right, here is our portfolio. We are up 236%, which is very, very good. That's $11,477. So let's see how we are doing there, Chevron. Oh, look, we're up. So overall, we're up 11%, which was a lot less. And I think we were losing probably just a couple weeks ago in December. But they are one of the oil producing companies, like we said, that are going to shine, I think, in this, as long as the regime change can be peaceful and it can be done in a way that benefits Venezuela. If it doesn't, and there's a bloody war for some reason, civil or revolutionary, then I think Chevron's going to collapse, because I think that's probably going to be one of the targets. But we'll see. So Chevron is one that we are watching, and I think you should watch as well. If you own it, then you're probably going to be pretty good. I'm hoping that Venezuela can get out of this and make something better, because they do have one of the largest oil reserves in the world, and they could be a rich country once again and bring about all sorts of riches for their people, and grow their middle class, grow their upper class, and stamp out hopefully the poverty level that it's at right now. All right, so oil. Is that it? Is that the whole thing? I think pretty much. It seems to be that one of the biggest reasons we went in there was to get the oil. Kind of like how we went into Iraq, except we said it was weapons of mass destruction. This time it's he's a drug trafficker. Well, he is. He is a drug trafficker. If he didn't do it himself, he knew about it, and I think the trial that's about to take place is going to state and bring out the truth that he is, in fact, one of the people who knew about the drug trafficking and did nothing about it. Now, whether or not they were getting paid by the drug traffickers or their bribes or whatever, who knows? That'll come out hopefully in the trial. But if you look at how we get some of these people, I mean, look at Al Capone. I mean, he was a known racketeer. He was a known criminal, murdered people, right? And how'd they get him? The IRS. So it doesn't necessarily have to be what they do that they get him on. So the IRS got him for tax evasion, sent him to jail for that. He died in jail. And this is how I see what they're doing with Maduro. They're getting him on drug trafficking charges, possibly or probably some sort of international criminal charges for, I don't know, human trafficking or murder or whatever, and get him into jail. That leaves a power vacuum for whoever to take place. Hopefully it is the lawfully elected individual and not the vice president. So here is so there's a couple different articles that I brought up, and I'm using Ground News here because I don't get paid by Ground News, and I actually haven't not paying the subscription, but I like how they separate between left, right, and when I read the articles, it generally does give it. So it is a good way of separating out your news. And I would like to get my news from all different sources just to get an idea of where the center is on all this. So this is talking about the safe transition can take place, and that's what Trump came out on the news and said, that they're going to run the country until a safe transition can take place. And this is the big one right here. I don't know why it's last. It should be up here, except they're talking about the drug trafficking. Analysts warn a nation of 28 million could face prolonged U.S. quagmire like Iraq, while Trump said U.S. energy companies would spend billions to rebuild Venezuela's oil sector amid unclear oversight plans. So he's going to bring Exxon Mobil and keep Chevron there and get rid of the 60% stake and all that, kind of like how Iraq had Halliburton and Carlyle Group come in and rebuild Iraq. These guys are going to get those contracts. We're going to get the oil flowing, and that will hopefully that money will go into Venezuela because they really need something to help their economy, and that will do it. And this is just one of the news from CBC that is, and there's a lot of these out there that people from Venezuela are coming out saying that this is a good thing. They're happy that Maduro is out. And there are a lot of presidents out there that are saying that they're happy that Maduro is out because they didn't recognize Maduro as the lawful president of Venezuela. So these people were living in Newfoundland and Labrador. They're refugees. They left the country because of economic or worse situations. So she said the situation in Venezuela is very difficult, she said. They're happy about what is happening because they want to live in a free Venezuela. Right now, they live with fears, repression, no food, no supplies. And this is echoed throughout many, many people. So they did the strike, and one of the biggest things. Okay, so Venezuela called it an imperialist attack. Of course, the government of Venezuela is going to denounce it. They're going to say that it was in conflict with international law. And I have a lot of conflict with that because, yes, it might be in conflict, and I would have to study the international law to figure out, which ones they broke, if any, and if it is one of those things that can be bent but not broken, right? If there's people that are being murdered, or is the U.S. allowed to intervene on the behalf of the people of a foreign country? That's one of those things that needs to be argued, and some sort of conclusion to take place. So we have refused to recognize any legitimacy of the Maduro regime, opposed its repression of the Venezuelan people. So Canada came out saying that they don't recognize the Maduro regime. So I'm trying to remember the vice president's name. What was her name? Of course, the Democratic leaders criticized Trump. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of the Democratic leaders all state that Maduro needed to get out. And it's not that Trump went in to take him out. It's whether the transition is what they're focusing on, whether the transition is going to be safe and speedy, expedient. I think that it needs to be well thought out. So even if it does take a little bit of time, it needs to be well communicated to the Venezuelan people. They need to help to rebuild their government and society, really. That's unfortunately is going to take time. Now, the question I think after this isn't as much whether or not Venezuela is going to prosper. I think they will. But with the precedence of this and earlier ones, are we going to do this again? Are there other dictators that are now quaking in their boots and fortifying their positions because they're afraid that the U.S. is going to go on and steal them in the night? Possibly. Has has that makings that he could go in and do this for other dictatorships and places that benefit the U.S. to have that dictator out of office. Now, the legitimacy of that is really up to you. So go ahead and, let us know. What we're looking at is all of the people who benefit from this. And of course, we feel for the Venezuelan people. But in the end of the day, we do have a portfolio to maintain and, hopefully some way of figuring out who is going to benefit. Now, if what we want to see is who President Trump decides to do the rebuilding, because that is where you want to put your money. But look at the companies that are going to benefit from this. And the most obvious one is Chevron. And we own it, so we're going to be looking at see if we want to put more money into it in the short term to have that long-term goal. There are other things that we do want to talk about. I don't know if I'm going to talk about it on this stream. One thing that is coming up for me is, of course, Friday. I have my surgery, so I will be out on Friday, and Tom will be in. Hopefully he'll have time to be able to pick up that stream. Otherwise, I'm going to try and be back on Monday, but it depends on the pain level and what kind of pain meds I'm on. It might be entertaining just to see me babble about whatever the pain medicine is letting me talk about. So with that in Sue, I have not much more. I mean, we could talk about Venezuela and the implications of that forever, but I don't think you really want to talk about that. You're going to have to tell me how to pronounce that. Azrix? There's like one vowel. Azrix. Said, I seen we got some oil too. Oh, it's Jordan. I also seen some oil companies start to go up. Yeah. And if you look at, did I close it? If you look at Exxon's going up. But yeah, you're going to see, I think, other oil producers go up. And I think we really, really want to just see the companies that Trump allows to go in. Still have to tell me how to pronounce that. Azrix. Put a vowel in, man. I'm sure that's some sort of anime thing. I don't know. Well, thank you. Xbox gamer tag. Yeah, my nickname goes from way back to probably 1998, I think, is when my nickname was given to me. It doesn't mean much now. An old Xbox. Okay. Well, that's pretty much all I have for today. We're going to have some discussions on, hopefully less murderous topics coming up. Yeah. So just let us know what you want us to talk about. And otherwise, we'll just keep coming up with things that are exciting and hopefully controversial for you guys to talk about. As always, thank you for joining us. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all those things. Help us to get this thing going. One thing that I did notice, thank you for the Mind of Matt. Wanted us to redo the opening screen where we have our disclaimer screen, which we need to do, but he had a great idea of, having like Back to the Future, Marty McFly and Doc Brown with the DeLorean as it goes, and Marty have our faces put on it, some sort of AI thing. We are going to hopefully do some of that stuff, but it takes time and energy and manpower to be able to do that stuff. So we need to get this to actually make money so that we can do this full time. And once we're full time, we will definitely be able to do all that things. So thank you for the suggestion, and we'll get to it. Other than that, happy investing.